Hello folks, I'm Sean Morley, your dedicated freedom-loving, gun-toting libertarian host of the Freetarian Rant. Posted on my Facebook page a little while ago regarding how some politicians are trying to amend the Constitution in order to ban babies born in the U.S. from becoming American citizens. There are obviously a few of you who agree with me, there are a few others who do not. I just want to start from the ground up as it pertains to how laws are made and whether they are legitimate, morally and ethically legitimate. So let's take a look at immigration laws, because the immigration laws currently in America were put forth by politicians who were elected by the American people. So let's start from the very ground and work from the ground and work our way up as to how these laws came into play and whether they're legitimate, morally and ethically. Let's go back to a time when let's just say there's no immigration law. You can come and go as you please. You buy property, everybody has property rights. You buy property, it's your property, you can do what you want with it. Now let's say I have a landscaping business here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I go down to Mexico for 2-week vacation, and I see at the hotel that I'm staying at a Mexican immigrant, a Mexican citizen of Mexico, of course, who is a phenomenal landscaper. He's keeping the hotel grounds in tip-top shape. He's a hard worker. I see him there every single day. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been looking for a good manager for my landscaping company. I'm going to approach this guy and see if he wants to work for me. So I approach him and introduce myself, and I say, hey, how would you like to come to Phoenix to manage my landscaping company? And we work out a deal as to, I want to pay him as least as possible. He wants to get as much as possible, and we meet somewhere in between. It's a private deal between him and I. Now, I bring him back to Phoenix. He begins working for my landscaping company. Now, mind you, this is in a theoretical world where you have true freedom. There is no immigration laws. He can come and go as he pleases. So now I have him in Phoenix working for my landscaping company. Now my next door neighbor, who has a son who is also a unemployed landscaper, comes to me and says, why would you hire a Mexican to manage your landscaping company when my son's been out of work for over a year and he's a landscaper? And I tell my next door neighbor, I wouldn't hire your son whether he was the last landscaper on the face of the planet. Your son is a lazy bastard. Now, my neighbor decides he's going to then say, okay, you're not going to hire my son. I'm going to confiscate all your business equipment. I'm going to tackle your Mexican worker, handcuff him, and personally drive him back across the border. What would that be called if my neighbor did that? Well, logically, if he confiscates my business equipment and making it impossible for me to run my business, that would be considered theft. It's a crime. Theft is a crime. If he tackled another human being and handcuffed them and drove them anywhere that human being didn't want to go, that would be considered assault, false imprisonment, and kidnapping. Another crime. Now let's say 2 of my neighbors agree that it's okay for my next door neighbor to do that. Does it change the fact that my neighbor's committing a crime? No, he's still committing a crime. Let's say 100 of my fellow neighbors agree that it's okay for my next door neighbor to confiscate my equipment and kidnap one of my workers. Is it now no longer a crime because 100 people agree with it? It's still a crime. It's still theft. It's still assault. It's still kidnapping. Now let's say every single person in my community agreed that it's okay for my neighbor to do that. Doesn't change the fact it's still a crime. Now let's say my neighbor votes someone into power to do something for him that if he did himself would be a crime. We've already established that. How can he vote someone into power to do that for him? How can he vote someone into power to come into my home and confiscate my equipment, to kidnap one of my employees, and it's no longer a crime? Food for thought. Doesn't matter how many people agree that it's okay to do something. If you cannot do it yourself as an individual because it would be a crime, then it's also true you have no right to vote someone into power to come into my business in my home and do it for you. A crime is a crime is a crime is a crime. What ICE agents do every day when they raid these meat packing plants where people have been hired legitimately, yet they're not here legally, is a crime. They're kidnapping people. Just because 51% of the people voted a politician into power to create the ICE organization to go around and kidnap people does not mean it's not kidnapping. It's kidnapping. It's a crime. So for those of you who think that government does have a right to deport people, kidnap people, and then send them back across the border, please tell me at what point in time those actions become legitimate. Because if you did it yourself, it'd be called kidnapping. So at what point in time? How many people have to agree? How many people have to vote someone into power to create an ICE organization that can legitimately kidnap people and ship them to wherever without it being a crime? And then if you can answer that question, which I know none of you can, because there is no point in time that a crime all of a sudden becomes something moral and ethical. Kidnapping is kidnapping is kidnapping. Regardless of how many people you put, regardless of how much government you put between the victim and the perpetrator, it's still a crime. Food for thought. If you can tell me at what point in time a crime becomes something moral and ethical, then also tell me why. Yet I haven't found one single person that can tell me at what point in time a crime becomes something moral and ethical. Till next time, I'm Sean Morley. This is the Freetarian Rants.